This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, well, welcome to the City and the Stewart District Utility Committee meeting for, I'm gonna make sure I know what day I'm at. We're in the 26th of October. It is, well, we're gonna say 4:02 now because we're a little late. The Board of Commissioners are present, meaning Commissioner Koshi, Commissioner Wright, and Commissioner Lorenzen. As we open this up, we're going to turn it over because we have our city partners, and we'll turn it over to them since they're chairing it this year and introduce everyone.
So this is Marcus. How are you doing? So do we want to do the Pledge of Allegiance?
Sure.
Pledge allegiance to the
flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation,
under God, indivisible,
with liberty and justice for all.
Great. So next, I think we'll do the roll call.
We're all here, right?
Yeah,
We're all here.
We're all here.
all committee members and staff.
Great. So looks like number 2, the agenda items is utility committee meeting.
What agenda you're working on?
The public forum aspect of the meeting, so it's open for public comment.
So the meeting thing that I got online from there, so I might be missing something. If I can get help, that would be great. But so community forum, is there anyone from the community who would like to speak to the committee?
So there's no one in the audience live here, so unless there's someone online. Raise your hand. I don't know what you do and go to.
Usually we have them they hit either the chat function lights up.
Do you know who this CG is? Yeah. Okay, other than, and then Rosalind's, she's one of yours, right?
Yes. Yep.
So do you have any comments for the committee? Okay, hearing none. Marcus, you have no comments.
Okay, great. Maybe we can go to the first agenda item then.
And Marcus, I put the I cut and paste just the text version of the agenda into the chat window, if that's helpful.
Great, thank you. Thanks very much. So we have public forum action items, project review. Are we under 3 public forum, and then we go to number 4 would be project review, correct?
Correct. So,
You want to start or?
Sure. Well, there's three things in there. So first thing is going to be the high level overview sewer assumption transition plan draft that we put together. I think myself and council member Peter Shea can kind of give us some background with that. I don't know if they want to flash it up on screen, or at least the first, we'll see if it pops up.
Maybe kind of cue it up, I guess. Yeah. While we kind of do some introductory remarks, I guess.
Yeah. So it's coming up on there for the audience to see if you're joining on the virtual wall. This was obviously a product, as we've spoken before, where there was a set of goals that I think myself and my co-partner in this, in the utility committee, at least from the sewer and the city side, put together. We come up with the 3 overarching goals that we wanted to at least have some agreement on as we kind of move forward, because as we were working through this, we got kind of stuck. But we thought, let's sit down and talk about those 3 goals. And as most people know, or at least to give kind of an overview, the goals were ending the lawsuit between the parties, meaning the city and the district, quit litigating each other, have positive, constructive dialogue between the entities that foster a fair and open path to an eventual unification, because we all know there is a unification agreement that is there with a 2033 date on it, but we were looking at trying to come up with something that we could either expedite that in a meaningful way. I'll let you talk about number two. If you want to have the goals.
Oh,
Yeah. Just reading.
well, it just trying to work to find an acceptable timeline between the two entities. And that is part of what the draft presentation is trying to get our arms around an acceptable time frame for this unification process and fulfillment of the assumption agreement. So that'll be talked about a little bit further on in the presentation. And then I guess I'll jump in here. I think the most important thing is of these three things is to ensure that the employees of the Lake Stevens Sewer District will transition to the city of Lake Stevens in capacities similar to the duties presently in place with the sewer district. And I guess I would just kind of preface, I wrote some notes here, I just trying to off the cuff stuff that's kind of hard for me to do. So I just kind of speaking for the city, I want to emphasize that the successful transition of the district to the city, I mean, the whole key to that is the successful employee transition. And so I want to emphasize that we're focused on that. And that's kind of how this overall transition plan came together as to the work plan that we have. And so trying to get our arms around this as to a direction, and hopefully we can get some buy-in as to that path that we're going down. So again, I just want to stress that the transition of the employees, that is the key to this whole success. So having said that, go ahead.
No, I mean, I think that's been the basis of what we put together when the dialogue started, was the three overarching goals. And then there's a lot of, I mean, while these goals seem broad here, they have a lot of caveats under that we have to work through. And so, but we did recognize the number one would really, I mean, besides ending the lawsuit, I think all of us understand that fiscally it's not in anybody's interest to continue litigating something, because all we're doing is taking ratepayer, taxpayer, other people's money and putting it towards something that's not going to really benefit anybody but legal. One of the biggest things was ensuring that all employees of the district transition to the city in their like roles and everything else. It's not like people are reapplying. It's like we're transitioning a sewer district one day into a sewer department under the city. I mean, the very minimal changes that would happen that I think most people would see would the heading on your pay stub might say City of Lake Stevens versus City or Lake Stevens Sewer District. But it's working through all those things. And I think that was a big part of this that was causing a lot of consternation over the years through some of the conversations was all employees going over. You know, there was a lot of water under the bridge over that, and we're just trying to get through that and be able to come up with a plan. Because I think through the talks that myself and Gary have had over the years, and I know everybody here has probably heard it and agree in one way or shape or form, is it's not something that needs to happen on the last hour of the last day, that there's a light switch that goes on, because that's not going to benefit anybody. And really, the electeds here have to kind of look at planning to get staff going in that direction. That's our job as an overarching, is to kind of understand it and come up with a transitional plan, because it isn't something that's going to occur overnight. I think that if you've been following us over time, we worked through a lot of it. At one of the last utility meetings when we kind of presented, we felt after going through all of the background, interviewing a lot of people, inviting people that have a stake in this, from the auditor's office with the state to the bond people, speaking with other organizations that had unification processes, a 3-year timeline is something that is doable if we do it right and things are working. Now, there is still a lot of work. It's easy for an elected to say that because we just make motions and do it. But we have to also understand how the staff has to kind of implement this because it's, like I said, it's easy for the electeds to do that. It's a lot harder for the staff to implement that. We're just trying to give the vision of how we can do it, but we need realistic understanding from everybody. But that's, I think that's where we have ended from the last time we talked. Is like, hey, we kind of vetted this and looked at it. Now, there are a lot of things that do have to happen, understandably. There's softwares and things like that. But again, we rely on the professionals that us as elected have hired, because you guys are the professionals as far as the staff. You give us that advice if you think we're on the right track or not. So.
And one of the things you folks, I think last month, wanted to see some sort of organizational chart. So that is part of the presentation today. It's a rather generic, I guess, or non-committal in the sense that there's room for changes or difference of opinion. And I guess I would like to say too that I think, you know, when we kind of get back to this lawsuit, one thing that I think that has really happened, because that has essentially gone away, is the fact that we can have some honest and frank conversations. And you and I have had that. And, you know, that kind of gets back to that level of trust that we didn't have. And so hopefully we can continue that. And I think as we go through this pathway, I guess, or schedule, we, you know, having those honest and open communications and discussions, frank talks, it'll only make us better in the sense of trying to get this solved so it benefits everybody. So anyway, hopefully that's helpful. With that, we're going to turn it over to the staff and kind of go through this again, potential road path or pathway to assumption. And if there's any comments along the way, certainly bring them up. So.
I would like to just highlight, thank you for that intro. After we started meeting about a month ago at the last utility committee meeting, and we started actually planning the transition, we identified 2 more possible common goals, which is transparent unification. That's our goal, is we want to be as transparent as possible with the employees and with the public as we work through this process. I think that's really important. And then, and like he said, the employees is probably the most #1 issue of the assumption in the transition. And so we want to make sure that we have thoughtful change management of people in the workplace culture, because that's going to be a big task. So I just want to make sure that's highlighted. So this is just a process overview of where we are at. The arrow indicates where we're at today, and that's the transition plan presentation today. The next step would be preparing an agreement amendment. And the diamond there is the action that would be taken by the Board of Commissioners and the City Council. They would have to take an action at each of their meetings. And then the flag is the signed agreement, approved agreement, and then the unification process begins. This just puts a timeline on those items. So the goal is to get this part of the process done prior to the end of this year. So what we've done per the utility committee's direction at the last meeting is we've sat down with each of the department heads at the city. We've met with Ryan, Commissioner Lorenzen, and Councilmember Peter Shagan, and we have formed a transition plan on what it would look like, what tasks would need to be done by department. So right here, this is a very high level kind of look at what those tasks would be in buckets with timeframes. We've also costed out some estimates for you to see. And I will just say that there is a six-page document of further detailed, items that would need to be check marked. So this is really a very high level, part of the presentation. So you guys can get an idea of all the things that we're thinking about in each kind of functional area of the city as we make this transition. So in human resources, something that is probably going to take the longest amount of time is classification studies. So understanding what you guys do, understanding your job descriptions, and determining what that job title might be at the city, if it needs to change or if it stays the same, kind of how do we fit them into our organization. For example, accountant, the sewer district has an accountant 1, accountant 2, and accountant 3. We just have accountants. So we have to just kind of analyze that, and study what levels of accounting you have and then how that, transfers over. And then we would do a compensation study. We would most likely use an outside party to conduct that study, so there's no bias in the process of salary study. And then we would conduct union negotiations, which would determine the salaries of almost all your staff coming over. So that would take the longest amount of time, the negotiations with the union. And then the next two pieces, kind of just typical HR things, it'd be basically onboarding a new employees in big groups. So we would onboard them, conduct training, benefit enrollment, just general HR setup. And then the other bucket is HR oversees risk management. So we would do a risk management transfer kind of, so we're both with WCIA, which is great. It would be fairly easy to transfer over everything because it's all computerized. And so that would be fairly easy. And then the safety program migration is just kind of identifying what you guys have for safety program, migrating that over just again with policies and whatnot. And same thing with emergency management and our action plan. So the cost estimate for HR is about $45,000. That includes mostly just the compensation study and union negotiations. That does not include staff time. The staff time is in the months section. In the finance world, we have, one of the first things that we would need to do is the conversion. The sewer district need to convert to the cash basis, and that is not going to take very long after consulting with an outside vendor. The bigger portion of that would be the financial software conversions of both the city and the sewer district and converting all their systems and their programs within the financial software to the cash basis. And the last piece, the finance overseas, is kind of purchaser setup and payroll setup. This total would probably be a little over $100,000, and that is $11,000 of that is the conversion to cash basis of the sewer districts, and the $100,000 is for the city to purchase a new financial software, more likely to purchase what the sewer district has to make it an easier transition. I'll do the next one, IT. Even though I'm not the most knowledgeable in IT functions, we got this from the IT department head. Currently, the sewer district is contracted with Snohomish County to do all their IT functions. Our department director is very familiar with the Snohomish County person in IT, and he would need to learn more about like how the sewer district is set up, but he's confident that if there was time, on a weekend, that it probably wouldn't take long to actually do the actual work of the migration. So those things are fairly cut and dry, and they wouldn't take that long if once he understands the process. So things that they would look at is, network migration, Active Directory migration. I don't know what all these terms mean, frankly. So I'm just reading them. User and computer migration and setup. So making sure that they're on our systems and, conducting asset inventory of computers and tagging and those kinds of things that IT does. And, what do you use for telecommunications and, cell phones and phones and all those things IT deals with. The thing that would take the bulk of time in IT is probably software assessment and migration. So, for example, the financial system is, we use Springbrook, you use Cassell. In Public Works, you guys use CityWorks, we use ViewWorks. So that kind of assessment and migrating those systems or, jumping from one to the other for whichever entity, whichever one makes sense, that would take some time. And then last but not least, kind of just my minor-ish stuff is just website integration and social media archiving, that kind of thing. And I'll let Aaron take over from here.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Tanya. In terms of public works, again, the list is quite a bit longer than that, but these are the high points. There's some work to do in engineering design and development standards integration. Of course, we're focused, our ED's focus on traditional things that we do now, streets and stormwater and so forth, parks. There's capital improvement plan integration, and that goes into the comp plan integration also. Fleet and equipment integration, we have a mechanic and some fleet assets, and you certainly do too. We'd have to find a way to make sure that those work well together. GIS integration, we all use ArcGIS. That's the great thing about a monopoly. And then ViewWorks, CityWorks, and I just put a slash there because I don't know how that's necessarily going to shake out. I will say that the city is beginning to embark on redeployment of ViewWorks, but you know, it's not an impossible task to reconsider. Okay, I think that'll take about 6 months to get through that and 6 months for the EDs, and those things can happen concurrently. Vendor and contract assessment. We have some on-call contracts for professional services and engineering services, and I think you do too. So we'd have to see how those can work well together. And then fee schedule update, of course, we need to make sure that the fees match yours in terms of sewer fees or sewer permits and municipal code updates. Fortunately, the sewer code still exists in Lake Stevens Municipal Code. It just deserves some attention. It's a $120,000 price tag. Much of that is in ViewWorks and CityWorks, and a little bit of it is in engineering for integration of our apps.
John, where you guys at with your CityWorks contract?
It's a year by year now, so.
Does Russ want to take this one, or community development, or should we?
Hey, Russ, are you on?
I am. Let me get my camera turned back on.
Sorry, I put you on the spot.
Yeah, no worries. So one of the things we've also talked about, and it's a topic on your agenda later today, is comp plan. So we'll need to integrate our long-range planning functions. I think we've done that pretty well through the years, doing evaluations of each other's plans. So that'll just become an integrated duty. And then how do we further integrate our permitting process and who's doing what on each team, working towards that sort of consolidation. We have recently hired a civil plans reviewer who's now doing our civil plans review. So we could definitely partner with you, with someone on your team who continues to do the utility type review. So.
And sorry, Barb, I didn't see you on there earlier when I talked about finance. Did you have anything to add for the finance department?
Hi, all. No, I think you said it best. Our biggest things are definitely going to be integrating Cassell. We have done the review of the Cassell program and do like the functionality. So we will likely go in that direction versus going out for RFP. So that will save us a bit of time. So yeah, that's the one thing that will take a little bit of time. Other than that, just integration of staff. I'm looking forward to that.
Okay, thank you. That kind of brings me to the people and the culture bucket. As we talked about in the first couple slides, the importance of the transparency and the transition of that. You know, some of the ideas that we've had is, you know, having a transparency center somewhere for the community, for staff to go to, see what's going on, what the next steps are for the transition plan. Also maybe having town halls for the staff, like meet the director, you know, like meet Aaron, meet the city administrator, kind of get to know the city leadership team, the mayor, elected officials, et cetera. And then have like an FAQ. So just basic, like what's going to happen? What's the next steps? Kind of post those up there on that transparency center, send those out. So my vision for that would just be just ongoing communication with staff. We want to make them feel as comfortable as possible during the transition. And then employee work locations is a big subject. So we will have to figure out, once we figure out the, the classification study, we understand what department they will go in. Most will go to public works, but there are some that will go to finance, HR possibly. We'll have to figure out employee work locations, office space, etc. And then last but not least, probably most important, is the team building and the training aspect, the culture piece that we would work on, that would be ongoing. So I just put a bucket of money in there thinking that we might hire an outside consultant to do some of the team building and even some of the training that would be closer to the actual date that we, obviously when the date that we sign their checks might be a good time to start doing that stuff. So I would like to highlight that point though, and Aaron mentioned earlier that a lot of these tasks are happening concurrently, and none of these are ordered in order of importance or in order of when they will happen, like first versus second. They're just simply put in buckets. And some of these will occur, before the actual unification date, and some will happen closer to the unification date, like at the last minute, and then some will happen after. For example, like HR setup, that's probably going to happen after for a lot of the systems once they have the city email and all that stuff. So, as far as the legal department goes, transfer of property and the dissolution. I don't think that's going to be a high cost after consulting with our legal and just filing paperwork, and it won't take very long. So that's
you're missing a couple zeros.
What was that?
I think you're missing a couple of zeros on the legal. 5,000.
This is just for processing the paperwork. So this is just agreeing, if we're agreeing to the accelerated unification, then there's no more litigation. So it's simply updating the agreement. It's just updating our current unification with an amendment, and that's all mapped out. So from my understanding that it would just be an amendment, and then the filling out paperwork for transfer of property and dissolution. We wouldn't need to go to the boundary review board because if we agree, then we don't need to go to the boundary review board.
Do assets and liabilities fall under legal, or where?
Like transfer of assets? Well, are you talking about like our properties and that kind of thing? That would be transfer of property under legal.
Is that under legal?
Mm-hmm.
You're talking about the transfer of the deeds from bill of sales for utility lines and things that the stations you have all around and the treatment plant, things of that sort, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I would agree, it'd probably be higher than that, but I don't think when you say a couple of zeros, that's
I mean,
500,000.
But that's 5,000. I mean,
Yeah, so maybe I
have
could
you guys
see.
seen a legal bill for 5,000?
No.
We haven't.
No, and as I said, I would agree with you. That'd probably
Because
be
the
higher,
assets,
but
that's a pretty major component of this.
That is true, but
Anyway,
Yeah.
so I was just curious if it was under the legal bucket,
I guess
where that fit.
at least maybe I'm speaking for Dan a little bit. We want this to be a staff-driven process in the sense that those are the folks that got to work the details. So if it is higher, that's fine. There's probably some other items that are a lot lower.
Yeah.
So, the kind of end result is what? I don't know as though fine tuning that particular bucket at this point is probably can be worked on. I mean, that's, yes, I would agree. There's probably more to it.
Any questions on the functional transition by department? Anybody in the online audience?
I mean, I'll have some comments at the end, but nothing specific in here. I think, the teams have done good work around the details and looking at this. I just think there's some, kind of larger macro things we can look at, but good detail. Appreciate the review.
One note on that, if you guys can ask the attorneys if transfer of properties and bill of sales will require taxes to be paid. Don't know the answer to that, but figure that out.
As far as excise, it's not real property though, is it?
Well, I'm not sure. That's why I think we need to.
There's gotta be an RCW that exempts that.
Yeah, I don't think so, but
Washington likes their money.
You know, most of those costs fall, for me anyway, fall in the bucket of we're gonna merge at some point, you know, regardless of the timing. So it's costs we're gonna have to figure out and bear anyway. So part of me is like, it's good to be specific and have an idea so we can set expectations, and all that's good. The actual amount though, we're gonna do it anyway. So part of me, it really doesn't matter. It's going to be costs we're going to have to make sure are tight and right, but we're going to incur them either way. And frankly, any of the costs that we've looked at so far pale in comparison to what both sides have spent on legal fees already. So I think we're on the right track.
So the next steps?
Yeah, next steps, I think is drafting.
Yeah, but let me
Yeah, go ahead.
maybe back up a little bit as to, you want to speak as to how this would be implemented in the path forward as to the mechanisms, I guess, as to how we would implement this?
Well, I think that, you know, part of it we looked at is like working back from the date, saying that we had 3 years to do that. But we have to be able to, I mean, a draft agreement would be coming from the district, from the board, you know, to our legal, presenting it to the city to get buy-in, obviously from the city side, and then eventually both sides have to come to that agreement. And then that's when the clock is starting, when we're doing that. When we have that date and say, okay, we're going to start this day and move forward, that's when the whole unification agreement and everything is going to be place. So I know that like we've talked, I mean, there's been discussion, if it starts now and goes January 1, 2023, then that's the clock that is starting to move forward from that position. So,
right, but I'm talking more about the actual implementation of this proposed plan as to the quarterback of this, or the person that's going to kind of guide this or shepherd this process through.
And part of that process has been, you know, we've put around there having the district's general manager become the one that's going to shepherd this under the city, you know, moving over to the city and shepherding the entire process, and then looking internally how our staff realigns there to work with the general manager in the new position to make that, because it's going to be a successful part of this is understanding how, because you've got somebody who's been, well, you've got a team of people who've been running the organization, but somebody going into the city side to understand, okay, because what's going to be important about this is to make sure that as a sewer district becoming a department, we're going to touch multiple departments within the city's umbrella. And you've got to have somebody who's going to be able to be in a position to answer questions, make some things happen, working with, whether it's finance, director of public works, you know, IT, that one will be fun, you know, HR and things like that. Troy's a fun person. I like Troy. His vision sometimes, you know, he gets it. But I mean, he understands the county, you know, because I think he knows JD quite well. But that's got to be a part of having it be a successful plan, is to integrate into the city with the ability to make decisions and make things happen. Because
and the best way to have that happen is to have somebody from the district being able to facilitate that.
Oh, absolutely. At least from my personal feeling, absolutely, because you know, as we all understand, I mean, the city hasn't been doing sewer for many years, and it is a new item to bring under the city umbrella, and we want to make sure it gets done right. You know, I'm not saying that you wouldn't do it right, but if you don't have the you don't have that specialty in place already, it does make it makes the learning curve quite steep.
So under that organizational chart, and I don't have it with me, how, as far as the hierarchy of the personnel, how, assuming we were to go down this path with utilizing the general manager as the quarterback, for lack of a better term, who would that quarterback report to?
I think initially that person would fall under Gene and I. And then probably, and then I don't know where we're at on where ultimately they end up at. Because we've talked about over in Public Works, if that makes sense or not sure exactly.
Or is it a separate entity? Separate, I mean, it is a separate enterprise fund. Why not keep it a separate entity? It's a utility fund, right?
So I would like to see that personally, have it be a separate entity. So outside the org chart of like your different directors and such, and I feel like sewer should not be under Public Works, that it should be its own. I don't know how you categorize it, but to me that makes more sense looking at your org chart. And I realize that there are other positions that go elsewhere in your organization, but it seems like a lot under Public Works, and I don't know if you have any experience with sewer.
I do.
I still would like to see it as a separate entity because it's $14 million you're bringing to the city, right?
Well, I would say through that process of 3 years, it would be a separate entity, would it not?
Well, you'd have the separate portion because it is an enterprise, but I think just have it separate as far as operations and planning outside of Public Works. I'm not sure that is efficient. I think you've got to be under Public Works because they all work together with the same goal and the same use of equipment and maybe even personnel.
But don't your departments intermingle all the time, right? So I don't see how that's why they wouldn't still work well together, right? Because HR talks to Public Works all the time and you're not under them, right?
No, I think that they'll be housed in the same building. I think that's probably the equipment and whatnot is going to be transferred over to the Public Works shop area. So they eventually be working in the same building.
Right, but you all work as a community, correct?
I think generally though, in municipalities that I've seen as a sewer district are under Public Works.
Just another commissioner's opinion. I don't have a problem with it being under Public Works. My focus is, frankly, at the top of the org, the city administrator slot and the director of Public Works slot. Those two folks, those two positions are what I care about the most in terms of what names post-merger are slotted into those two slots. So I'll just lay it all out. The rest of the organization, I think the structure could work just fine. My second concern would be, and Gary, you covered it at the front end, which I really appreciate, an absolute ironclad clarity on the employees of the district and their seniority and all of that. And the sooner we involve the unions of our representative workforces, the better, because they need to be a party at the table and probably should, ideally would have been a party already, but we should have them involved as we go forward as an equal party working through this. That would be the second concern. And then there's a whole lot of non-concerns. The cost piece of it, we're going to do this anyway. It's a question of timing and when we start. It's way better than what we were doing before, and it's costs that we're going to incur now or later, and probably it's less money now, in terms of dollars. And I think we can figure out the rest of it. I think it's going to take us, I think 3 years is the right expectation. Ideally, it can be done in less, and if it can be great. It's all about when it starts. For me, when do we start, and what are those two slots, and who's in those slots? The rest of it, for me, it hinges in terms of the start time on what that looks like, because that's truly blending the organizations and the talent. And that might take some time to work through, but that's where I'm at.
Kevin, just clarification, when you say the start time, are you talking the start time of the process or the start time when the assumption is done?
Well, we're preparing now and going through and looking at what things can be and so forth. That's fine. And maybe we can work it to where there's some type of, it's a step type of function, and probably maybe you and Dan are best to work that out in a smaller audience. I'm open-minded to that. But somewhere in that 3-year window, we would need to have, I would need to have clarity on those two positions.
Can I ask a question? And Anya, maybe you can answer this for me. So I just wonder if I looked at the timeline. So before the agreement amendment, because once that is prepared and signed, we're going, right? There's no stopping. We've amended the interlocal agreement that took 3 years to prepare. And so when I'm purchasing a house, a business, any property, I know before I sign what I'm getting into. And I'm wondering if we can answer some of these questions about the employees and this beforehand, before signing it. Is that, do you feel like that's a realistic thing? Can we switch that on the timeline so that we have,
Which part of the timeline are you?
I'm saying that, as both of you said, transition of employees is key to success. All employees transition from the sewer department to the city. So before we amend the interlocal agreement, that we know what we're getting into, it's more definitive, like a 2-week turnaround. I don't feel like it's realistic.
I would ask the question as to how definitive do you want it to be, and what is that definitive language that you want to see? I mean, as Anya said, we don't quite understand your job classifications yet,
right?
Your job descriptions. And is that what you're looking for as to, and the salaries and things of that sort? I mean, we generally know what the salaries are, but as I understand it, the pay classifications don't mesh, right? Between the sewer district and the city as far as pay.
Some of them will be easy. Some of them are different. Mariah and I spent some time going through our salary grids and compared like jobs. And in some areas, the city pays higher than the sewer district. And in some areas, the sewer district pays higher than the city. So we'll have to analyze that and negotiate with the union, which is going to take time. So I guess if you're...
And you negotiate, correct?
I'm the lead negotiator, but we would definitely hire a legal,
okay,
a legal team. We usually go through Summit Law, which I think we use the same attorney actually for legal. And he actually, if we use the same person, he did your guys' last contract.
So I just see Brett, you're up for re-election, me and Kevin are up, potential. I want to protect people here. So I feel like we're in this really critical stage of, I'm not going to sign anything until I feel like I'm confident that the people I represent, the ratepayers, that I'm the last commissioner, and do you know what I'm saying? I want to be thoughtful and thorough, and I totally appreciate all the time that's gone into this and having a timeline, but some of these questions I feel like we have to answer beforehand.
So Andrea, are you saying that you want to know what the pay scale of a negotiated union contracts are going to be before you sign? Because we're not going to be able to get there until we move forward with the process. I think you're asking for some detail that can't happen until we're in the process.
Is there isn't a way to I know you can't guarantee positions, right? That doesn't really happen, correct or no?
I think we've already guaranteed that we're not going to get rid of anybody.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think,
goal, right? Transfer all employees.
Yeah.
And that would be in the amendment?
Certainly.
Well, the amendment would come from us when we would do that.
Okay.
I think that's going to be in the amendment.
Okay.
I think that one thing that would be kind of important to a certain degree, and maybe this is the timeline to start looking at, is comparing some of the, because that information, whether it's through association-wide cities or counties, understanding a sewer function from a district standpoint and a city are going to be relatively the same. You got to have either the wastewater 1, 2, 3, or 4 to operate an organization, and maybe coming up with some of that already to understand that there's commonality already in the job description. I think where we need to look at is, the compensation is going to be there. What I would look at is at this point, what is our compensation based on our current collective bargaining agreement? How is that going to roll into the city's collective? Because I'll tell you, we're going to get a lot of pushback. We're just, to have our employees go over to lose money from what they're doing. That, we may guarantee them work, but if they're going to lose money, they ain't going to stick around. They're going to go to Brightwater, or they're going to go to Alderwood, or they're going to go to Cross Valley, or they're going to pick somebody else than us. And then that's not going to help the city anymore. That. So I think that.
But wouldn't that be the situation right now, though? In the sense that if you have a wastewater treatment plant operator, I mean, why would we diminish what they're making at the city? Just because?
No, and I know that. I just didn't know. What I can't speak for is on the city's behalf to be able to sit there and say this, because what it comes down to a lot of the times being in negotiations, especially law enforcement and public works, it's all about the comps, because that's what drives. Every time unions get together, the union side will sit there and say, we want Brightwater, we want Pierce County, where in reality they might not be. They might be Alderwood, or they might be Mukilteo. So what we're just looking at is, I think that's going to maybe rest assured is if the city truly looks at it, it's like, okay, yes, your comps that we used the last time are comparable to what's coming up. And that, like you said, you can't guarantee a contract you haven't negotiated in the future. But I think a non-starter would be a lot of the times if we turned over, because like you were saying, to a certain degree, there are positions in the city's schedule that pay higher, and there's some that we probably pay higher. And so how we've got to come up with that fix previously, because you don't want to lose talent thinking I'm going to come over. A prime example, when I started with the city way back in the 90s, the reality was in a contract, there was a few of us that actually lost money going into the city and dealing with theirs just because of our hire date, and they didn't want to go back and sit there and say, well, our longevity is here, so you're going to lose 0.25% over the time of your entire employment. That makes one thing that turns off a lot of employees is a loss of money. I mean, that's just it. We all know that.
Yeah,
and so.
But I think that there's, take for example, wastewater treatment, your wastewater treatment plants. We don't have any, so they're going to come in at what they make. Like, that's not going to change, right?
Absolutely.
I think the only areas that we would look at where there might be differences of same levels of work, but differences of pay is probably your operations guys and maybe some admin folks, right? Accounting folks. But like your example, like we don't have one, so why would we change it?
I think we're making assumptions on what labor will care about, and I think we need them at the table prior to signing an amendment to know firsthand what their care abouts are. I think that would be the safest and wisest and the most transparent approach.
So we as the employers, we have the right to make this change. And then once we do that, then we would engage with the union. And they're going to dictate, we're going to like together sit down at the table and negotiate, just like you guys would with your staff for your next contract negotiations. It's no different.
And like my father told me, just because you can doesn't mean you should. And one of the learnings, I believe, Gary, you and Dan from the fire district was their recommendation was to have labor involved earlier in the process than they did. So I think it's a big deal, and I would encourage us to consider having that occur if we want to pass an amendment.
I completely agree. We should involve them and like keep them informed on what's happening. I think that Mariah's been doing it. I mean, they've been having labor management meetings. They talk to the union reps and they know what's going on. I don't think they're completely in the dark. Maybe you can speak more to that.
Yes, we do have quarterly meetings with the union, but not that they're totally in the dark, but we haven't finalized anything. because they haven't actually been invited to the table to actually discuss what is going to happen in the merger. Those kind of details haven't been discussed, just the talks are continuing.
So I guess
Very
that
high level.
begs the question, if we have the ambiguity about the agreement that's floating out there, would they even be willing to talk? Because there's no specifics.
One would give them the option. That would
Yeah,
be
that's
the
true,
most
but
transparent route.
I'm just asking the question.
Okay, so do we need to have a shop steward here on the next meeting?
No, I think this would happen through a labor management meeting, their next labor management meeting. You would present the timeline, you present the buckets, and ask them what their concerns are. You can bring them back.
Hey, give them the same presentation.
Exactly, yeah.
But no, I would not do it as an open public meeting.
Okay, so that's item number one. Again, drive back to you. It's for specifics. as
No, I
to
think
what-
it's good. I just want to have these detailed conversations, because for me, sometimes like that, the general stuff, I'm like, I don't know you guys. I mean, kind of, but you know what I'm saying? I just need like my own personal reassurance of who I'm representing, that these details are in place. So that's why I'm asking the questions. Do you know what I'm
So-
saying?
And I'm saying, what are those details besides the union?
I mean, that's
Is
like
that
a
the-
big important thing.
That kind of encompasses everything as far as,
We'll write the second, yeah.
Well,
Maybe I'll have something else in about 4 minutes.
But
I don't know, there's just a lot of details, right?
well, again, I'll say this because we're having an open conversation. We've gone through this process since March. And we've kind of played the casual whack-a-mole game in the sense that the issue has come up, we've addressed it. The issue has come up, we've addressed it. And I'm kind of sensing that another issue is coming up, and so we need to address that. And so I'm asking the question, what specifically can we address?
For me, that's
for your
it right
concern?
now.
Is
Yeah.
the union issue? Or,
Well, I think the union issue is a big part of it, because we know that we have unionized workforce. And to keep us on the right side of not being in some sort of UOP or something like that. When you do change things, conditions, benefits, you have to have good, frank conversations. I think when we talked with Chief O'Brien at one time, he said, get people involved. We haven't gotten to the point until now we're at that point. And it is a good time to start taking a look at some of these things, because we're looking at wanting to get by. Everything's easier if we can get everybody to buy in. Now you can get, everybody on board. You're not going to get 100%. That's just not how it's going to work. But
no, but that's the goal.
oh, absolutely, it's a goal.
And so I guess getting back to, addressing those specific questions, it's important to do that. So, I guess I'll ask again, those specific things that you want to know so that we can address them. And
For me, it's the same thing I said earlier. Top of the org, specifically city administrator and director of public works, those slots, the name in those boxes and when, and making sure our representatives are at the table and we have that process nailed down so their concerns are met early in the process. Those are the two things those are the two things for me that would have me be comfortable accelerating the merger beyond what's in the contract today.
so I'll ask again, Kevin, please help me. When you say the department heads, are you looking for those names at the time of the agreement or at the 3-year out time?
I think it could be either, but we need to be specific.
Because as a council person, I don't know if we can answer who's going to be the public works director in 3 years and who's going to be the city administrator in 3 years.
Kevin, are you asking who the general manager is going to work for in the beginning? Is that what you're asking?
What I'm asking is I look at this as a merger. All right. I don't look at this as a takeover. I look at it as a merger. And when you merge functions and you merge leaders in that model. And there's certain timing, employee contracts and everything else that blend into this. And so for me, if we wanted to put the pedal down on this really quick, you know, we wanted the fastest possible. If our general manager was the city administrator and Jonathan was the director of public works, I can wrap my mind around it. That builds a lot of trust between the organizations. That is a very different feel than if I slot our two leaders off in the corner, you know, or somewhere else lower in the org chart. So I'm just being very transparent and specific. That is really important to me. That changes my perspective in terms of when T0 on this thing starts and we start saying, hey, in 3 years, we know we're going to be done. We're hoping we're going to be done earlier. So that conversation and timing and the union involvement, those are the two things that are foundational levers for me to really get behind accelerating our merger together.
So, Kevin, my question is, if they were just a department underneath the city administrator and maybe a different division, you wouldn't be as comfortable moving forward?
Correct.
Okay.
I wouldn't be as comfortable moving forward in the fastest possible time frame, which would be 3 years from whenever T0 is.
So you wouldn't be comfortable T0 starting in January or February of 2023. You were saying, hey, it would be a year or two from now, or just to see how things go, or?
It would be whenever really, that's a question to the city. So whenever that merger of leadership could happen and would be palatable and within other folks' this gets into individual career plans and everything else. I recognize that, and it's not a simple issue, but T0 for me would start when that can happen.
So with all the work and everything that everyone's done, great job, by the way. I know there's a lot of work there, and
absolutely.
We've saved a lot of money. But so you wouldn't be willing, if the org chart were to have Mariah underneath the mayor or under Gene, in some sense, you wouldn't be comfortable with her being under Gene and be buying off on this earlier. Is that correct?
Correct. Just to be specific, I wouldn't be comfortable starting in January.
Right.
Correct.
Are you thinking a year, 2 years? What's your timeline for something like this?
That's a question to the city, because I don't know those employee contracts. I don't have conversations with those individuals of what their career plan is or isn't. I mean, that gets into all those things. So it's impossible for me to answer that question. That really resides with the city to look at it and say, all right, we really would like to accelerate instead of 10 years and not 6 years, but we want to start. What does that look like time frame? Well, you know, I don't know. Depending on what those answers are, it might be a year, it might be 6 months, it might be in January. It depends on what that looks like overall. But as far as a merger goes and blending cultures, a lot of the other stuff that's in the detailed work there takes care of itself in that type of model. A lot of the trust pieces, it's nothing about the individuals that we're talking about. It's just when you're blending organizations and blending the cultures, that accelerates it. And for me anyway, brings a level of comfort and trust.
But don't you think if we're working together on this and we're bringing you, I totally agree with you, bring labor to the table, let's talk about it, because I think that's pretty easily solved. They've got negotiations, and we need the staff, we need the team, and you know, we need Jonathan Dix to run the plan. We don't have that piece, and that's a great part of the merger. But if we don't start going down the road of this, we never know the details, we never know the challenges and things that are going to happen and work through them. That's the hard part, is we kind of got to go down that road to get there, to see what the challenges are.
Well, I guess maybe I meet you partway on that one. I think the team has done a great job of identifying some things that have worked through, that I've talked about here. One of the things is the conversion from accrual to cash. That was a big deal. That was kind of one of the boogeymen in the corner that we had talked about and maybe used as an excuse or not. It sounds like we have that pretty well nailed down, which is fantastic. The assumption of some of the debt was something that, you know, I was able to dive into with Mariah and dig through with the bond folks and all that. We've put that one to bed. So I think we're at a place where I'm confident we can bang this out in 3 years with both parties together, rowing together. And I think the details can work themselves out. And I think it would be a whole lot less cost overall at the end of it than the trajectory that we're on. So yes, there's going to be things we're going to discover. There's going to be some Easter eggs we're going to find along the way. And with two willing parties that are motivated, we'll solve those and be able to bang them down. So I think we've got to the level of detail to be able to say, yep, we have a pretty good handle on that 3 years is a realistic time. It really comes down to when does T0 start and what's required to have T0 start.
So,
and
I guess one other point, I've been pretty consistent on this one. I've shared this with Dan. I've shared this with Gary. This isn't Kevin coming out of the woods at the last minute and trying to derail anything. Yeah, I think we are close, and I think we've made huge progress, and I've gotten more comfortable with the idea than I ever have. But those are the two things for me as I sit here on the 26th of October that for me it hinges on.
So Kevin, I would say I do appreciate you have come a long way, and I appreciate it and I recognize it. I don't see me replacing my city administrator nor my public works director anytime soon. But I get the idea of merging versus taking over. Absolutely understand it. What I do see Mariah as working directly for Jean so that she has access to all the departments so that she can seamlessly, quickly, and fluidly at the right pace be able to merge both the organizations together. That's where I'm at on it, Kevin. But I don't see me changing out either one of those two positions anytime soon.
And I fully respect that. 100%. I appreciate that communication.
Why not create like a deputy director? I don't quite know your exact structure, but a deputy director role, because I see the value in someone coming in a leadership role. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely.
And create something like that instead of like, I don't know what the title is right now, like, I don't know, some of this stuff is like so many words.
Yeah, there's a lot of words. And I'll tell you, my thought process is we bring Mariah on, she works directly for Jean. We go through the merger process. But then eventually that position becomes a deputy public works director.
I'd like to see it going in as that.
Call it what you may.
Call it what you want.
Right. Well, it's a title, or it's a place, and it's a place where 28 employees see their leader going in a leadership role and not some like.
Well, I would think it'd be a much more elevated spot under Jean than deputy director, public works director. But if you want to call it that, whose task is to merge, that's fine.
You see the.
I'm tracking with
well, we're.
Yeah.
I think it gets down to more what the role and responsibilities is given to that person rather than the job title. I mean, if you call whatever, and if she has no authority, what difference does it make? So it's a matter of how you detail that job description and the roles and the authorities that she has. And I think from what I'm hearing is those roles and authorities would be pretty doggone high in the sense that she represents the sewer district coming to the city. So I think maybe that's the detail you're looking for as to what level of responsibility and authority that position does have. And I think we could probably detail that out.
Yeah, absolutely. And if she's working directly for Jean, like.
So it's like a deputy city administrator, or then you have a deputy director of public works. I mean, a lot of organizations, as they start to grow and looking at the city's org chart, you got a lot of directors And that's a lot of work for one person to manage a lot of things underneath the time. So maybe that is the succession plan as the city becomes from the 5th to the 4th to the 3rd largest city in this county with the rate everything's growing, that you have an expanded org chart to look. I mean, I know under the county government at times we've done that in places where placeholders are put there. They may not be funded, but they're in that position for the future, and that gets everybody on board. Not only just the employees see that there's a succession model coming in place eventually, that if they strive to do that, but the electeds also understand it too, because electeds, I can say it is,
Quit slamming the elected.
we have a very limited view sometimes.
You do. I like how you talk a lot about like with HR, you know, like validating employees and stuff. And I agree with Kevin that if you do these specific things, it makes you just feel more confident about what you're coming into. Do you know what I'm saying? Like I like those things that you had written in as far as like the culture and such. But I think by creating positions of like truly a merger, that you have more confidence coming into that scenario.
Kevin, with that, if we were to detail the authority and the role of that position that we're talking about, would that give you a higher level of comfort?
I think at this point, why don't we do that, and I'll keep an open mind.
Okay.
We've drafted a job description for the Public Works Director in anticipation. So
For the deputy or for
the Deputy
Yeah.
Public Works Director, because we talked about this before, so I'm glad you brought it up, because going straight into that role, it fits in with our city's strategic staffing plan. So we had envisioned that from the beginning is, you know, eventually when the sewer comes over, that it would be underneath Public Works umbrella with a deputy director. Now that the Public Works is expanding, you know, the direction of the department needs the leadership in place, you know.
But I think initially, so my problem with that initially is Deputy Public Works Director works for Aaron, and what I'd rather have her do is work for Jean so that she can, if she needs to, go and with his authority, work with directly with the director to make something happen, if that makes sense.
And it does, I think it does. I mean, if you made a position like a deputy city administrator, it puts it in there that the other directors do know. I mean, I think over the next few years, it's going to be something that the city's going to have to revisit anyhow.
Right.
And why not start visiting it now than trying to be behind the eight ball on a lot of the things? And there can be, because I can guarantee you, the staff at the city, like any other government organization, has more work on the table than that individual director has time to do. And it gives an opportunity to start spreading the wealth or misery, depending on if you're on the lower side of what you get on your desk. But yeah, it's helpful.
And not to forget about Jonathan, but I would say that that is probably this, as you indicated, you probably want to see more detail as to how Jonathan fits in the organization also. So in the authority and roles that he would have.
Yes.
So, okay.
Which we've also thought about, you know, bring him in as an operations manager, similar to like his position now, overseeing what he sees now. I think it fits in well with the organization, and we looked at that and drafted that. So.
Yeah, Jonathan's position I think is a lot easier just because we already have an operations manager who's overtaxed with what he currently looks at. So it'd be great to have another one who looks at what Jonathan looks at right now. It just makes sense.
So we'll detail those two items and go down that road. Okay. And then I don't, what is the consensus as far as talking to the unions at this point?
Well, I think our staff needs to reach out to be able to, I mean, that's gotta be something, that's not gonna be a public forum aspect of.
No, but just the direction. Are we going to go that direction or?
Yeah, I mean, we have, as you can probably see on the virtual wall, quite a few folks from our organization that belong to unionized work. So that would be something that there would be that reaching out to get to get, some things going.
Is that something we should probably include our union in as well?
At this point.
When you start talking about merging workforces and seniority and everything else, I would recommend it, but certainly your call.
I'm not sure what it hurts. Does it hurt anything? Because we are in negotiations right now, so that would be my only concern. Other than that, I don't know what it hurts.
We've kept our union informed.
Yeah, but it might be good to put all the unions in the same room with the same presentation to get the same feedback.
Yeah.
From my understanding, when Chief O'Brien from the fire, when Surfer became Surfer from Lake Stevens merging into Snow 7, I think it was one thing he kind of talked about to a certain degree. It would be good to get people on the same sheet of music. Now, obviously, you got different negotiations going on. And eventually, as sewer would unify into the city's umbrella, it's a different job description anyhow on certain things, because like I say, if you work in wastewater treatment, operating a plant, you have to have certain certifications to do that. So, I mean, but, that's where I think the city is going to detail out as far as job descriptions.
So we got our marching orders. Right?
They got them. I mean, it starts the process, and I think that it's, because you gotta have this, you gotta have them, and like Kevin was telling us, they gotta be they gotta be involved in the sense.
Right.
Of having, that rolls into the cultural aspect, because even though we're all in Lake Stevens, there's east side and the west side sometimes, and they don't always, for whatever reason, see that vision. So
hopefully we can present that information as the detailed descriptions, which I guess we already have to some degree. Maybe you could look at those a little bit more in detail and drop your thoughts. Present those at the next meeting, and hopefully we can meet with the unions by the next meeting.
I feel like I have more confidence, knowing that these details are getting looked at before we have this agreement, so that, I feel like I'm doing the right thing.
Good. That's what we want.
Great. So do we want to move to the next item?
Sure.
Item D, final draft sewer district comprehensive plan.
I'll take this one briefly. The district's comprehensive plan and facility plan, the draft has gone off to Department of Ecology, Snohomish County, and the City of Lake Stevens for their comment periods. We received 4 comments back from the county and 14 back from Ecology. We've addressed each of those comments.
We're gonna need to mute somebody there. That's okay. They dropped. Thank you.
So no substantial changes to the plan since it was presented to the utility committee about, 2 months ago now, when we talked about that. So it'll be considered at tomorrow's board meeting for final acceptance by the Board of Commissioners, and then it'll be actually sent off to you guys as our final comprehensive plan. If there's any questions, Jonathan's prepared to answer.
Yeah, there were a couple of land use designations that were.
Yeah, all of the changes are actually in an appendix in the plan itself, and that link has been sent out to everybody. That's all I've got. Next item, Marcus.
Great. Item C, Washington Department of Commerce Industrial Site Readiness Grant Program update.
That's Russ.
That's Russ.
Russ.
Is he still on?
Yeah. I am still on. So earlier this week, the city applied for a site readiness grant from the Department of Commerce to
do a study to do engineering design for a sewer line extension on 131st lift station and then associated stormwater and road improvements. With that, we got a letter of support from the district. Thank you very much. We got a letter of support for the Economic Alliance for Snohomish County, as well as some from private owners. So the grant request was for $260,000. And again, that would go towards sewer, stormwater, and other infrastructure design. Pretty excited about it. These type of grants don't come along very often, so we jumped on it. And thanks again to the sewer district for your help in that and providing some graphics and cost estimates.
If I could throw in, speaking of grants, one of the things we are working out in our minds with this year's budget is a grant writer. And what that looks like, is it an FTE within the city? Is it a contract position? Is it a contract position that focuses on state grants / federal grants? I mean, it's really a complicated position to try to figure out. But there's just so much money out there right now that we need to make sure that we've got our hand out for it. And so just keep that in mind from the sewer district perspective as well. If we bring someone on or if we contract with someone on, to make sure that we are, cross-talking our projects and thoughts for the future, that we could be looking for some money.
Great. Any more discussion on that? So we'll go to item 5, the development review.
The district DEAs was included in the packet. No changes this last time. No new DEA.
It's getting short. Used to take up more than one page. I want to see more than one page.
Used to take up 2 pages.
Yes.
So Costco still hasn't paid their permits. You're gonna let them open?
No. No, they've proposed a couple of interim options. They want to get their bakery open pretty soon, but we haven't done any testing on any of the sewer lines or anything in the lift station. And
The lift station isn't built and has no controls.
yeah, so I don't know how we're going to be able to meet their timeline. They wanted the bakery to be open by the end of the month, end of October. Yeah, I don't know how that's going to happen. Lift station hasn't been built yet.
Are we all aware of this?
Just the first time.
No, John, get with me offline, please.
Yeah.
Yeah, I heard they were having some issues with generators, but I hadn't heard about the lift station.
Yeah, the controls have a long lead time.
So what happens if it doesn't get in place?
And that's what we're trying to figure out now. So
is there a rental option or a lease option?
I think we should discuss it offline.
Yeah.
Talk about it.
Yep.
Need to run that out.
Wow.
I want to be able to walk across the highway to the Costco. I'm waiting to push a car.
You can go to the gas station.
Yeah.
That'd be it. Wow. Sorry I asked the question.
I'm glad you did.
Yeah.
Marcus, you're up.
Okay, general sewer wastewater facility plan update.
We actually already did that one. So we're on
We
to
did.
item 6.
Action item, can I get a motion to approve the meeting minutes of September 22nd, 2022?
I make a motion to approve the meeting minutes for September 22nd. 2022.
Second. Can I get a second on the motion?
I seconded Brett.
Any discussion on it? Great, all in favor of approving the meeting minutes of September 22nd?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Great, motion passes. Next meeting, what day are we looking for in November?
So the week after Thanksgiving.
The week after.
Yeah, well, yeah, I wouldn't have, it's still, well, in theory, wouldn't it be that?
Right, but Wednesday afternoon. at 4
Yeah,
o'clock before
no,
Thanksgiving.
no, we're gonna change ours, I'm sure it's gonna be on there, so. The 30th is the Wednesday, the last one.
And then no December.
We'll be here on the 20th.
So for me, I have jury duty that week of the 28th. So, and I've postponed it enough to where they're getting a little more rigid on that. So I'd say schedule it and we'll see how it goes. Most folks don't like me for juries when they ask me questions anyway. So
Just go in there and tell them, they're all guilty. No.
Tell them you know a cop. And all cops are right.
it's something about the Bible I said on the handrail, and I point and say, "Is that the guy I read about in the paper who's guilty?" I think that throws them off each time.
So 11:30 or December 7th,
Of what?
2022.
November 30th.
I was thinking November 30th. Then.
Yeah, November 30th
Oh.
or December 7th.
Yeah,
I
you were
didn't know if
talking-
you typically meet them in December?
Yeah.
Guys, jeez.
Hey, we wrap presents early. We get all that stuff done early.
Looks like November 30th. Okay.
All right, so we've got our meeting for November 30th. Can I get a motion to adjourn?
I make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Turn it back to the sewer district.
Okay, so Commissioner, back in regular session. How about a motion to adjourn since there's nothing else?
Supposed to adjourn? Oh, that's them.
I'll make a motion to adjourn. Kevin.
Been in so many
I'll
meetings.
second it.
It's been first and second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
That concludes this meeting. Good meeting, everyone. Thank you.
Have a good week, everybody.
Take care, y'all. Nice work.
Thanks, Kevin.
You can set that to run.